January 25th, 1924, the French alpine village of Chamonix. 294 athletes representing 16 countries march in the opening day ceremonies of the first Winter Olympic Games. This was a pioneer effort to determine whether young men and women from different countries would compete every 4 years in winter sports, as they had since 1896, when the Summer Olympics were revived after almost 1,500 years. In Chamonix, 14 champions were crowned in 6 sports: ski jumping, ice hockey, Nordic skiing, speed skating, bobsledding, and figure skating. Ironically, till now, figure skating had twice been contested as part of the Summer Olympics. In women's figure skating in Chamonix, a legend was born with the appearance of an 11-year-old Norwegian girl, her name Sonja Henie. No one knew then that Sonja Henie, finishing last in the competition, would become the most dominant and publicized Olympic champion of her era. Under the guidance of her father Wilhelm, she revolutionized the sport with dramatic programs of jumps and spins. Her short skirts introduced a new look, foregoing ankle-length dresses. 3 years later, at age 14, she won her first world championship, and the following year at the 1928 San Moritz Games, her first gold medal. Thereafter, whenever she stepped onto the ice, the result was a foregone conclusion. For 10 years, she dominated the sport, from 1927 to 1936. 10 consecutive world championships, 3 Olympic gold medals. Sonja Henie was so dominant that the greatest male Olympic medal winner to this day has faded into obscurity. His name, Gillis Grafström of Sweden, a contemporary of Sonja Henie, who assisted her in her early international competitions. Grafström's Olympic record was even greater than that of his pupil, winning 3 gold medals and 1 silver, the greatest figure skating medal winner in Winter Olympic history. Dick Button became the first United States figure skating gold medal winner in 1948, when the Games were resumed in San Moritz after a 12-year hiatus because of World War II. He repeated his victory in 1952, but it would be another 4 years before an American woman would stand on the top step of the victory platform. Overcoming non-paralytic polio as a child and a severely slashed ankle less than 2 weeks before the 1956 Cortina Games, 20-year-old Tenley Albright earned the title of the finest female figure skater in the world. When HayesJenkins won the men's title in 1956, it became the first time in Winter Olympic history that Americans had won both individual championships. Jenkins' victory and 16-year-old Carol Heiss's second-place finish behind Tenley Albright marked the beginning of a romantic story that would continue 4 years later to Squaw Valley. Then Carol Heiss won the gold medal, and soon after, she and HayesJenkins were married.
First of all, we think of the facility here.
Oh, this facility is first class, absolutely fabulous. Everything's so convenient. We can go from one rink to the other rink as coaches. I mean, the back doors, and then this conference room, and the office, and just the restaurant area, besides the good ice and the wonderful seating.
Right. Is this, now you've obviously traveled far and wide. Kirk and Linnell have sort of taken this program and started from scratch. Is this something where they're starting to build a reputation in your community?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we as coaches and skaters know, Kirk and Linnell very well. And, what's interesting about them is they're not just wonderful coaches and former skaters, but the business sense, how they've organized everything here in Jamestown and this facility, just like doing the scheduling, getting the rooms for coaches. I mean, there just isn't anything they don't do and do well.
Yeah, right. Did you ever think you'd ever get beyond her?
You know, in the early years, it just seemed at nationals, I was always second to her, you know, for 3 straight years. The Worlds, the first year I was 4th. So that I thought, you know, Tenley was going to definitely win. It was my first year. Next year I was injured. But by the second time I was on the world team and I was second to Tenley, I thought, all right, now, this is going to be the battle. We're going to be doing this for the next 5 years. And I really have to settle in and work on these school figures. So I remember spending 4 to 4.5 hours doing the school figures, because that was the part when you're younger that you don't particularly care for. You know, it's the circles and it's more mechanical and it has to be so precise. The free skating was fun. It was free. You could be spirited. You could have all the sort of passion you want in skating and fly around on the ice and do the jumps and the spins. So that's what I liked. But it ended up being a good thing for skating and a good thing for both of us, because I think it made us better skaters.
The press was following this, you know, Carol Heiss, Tinley Albright, you know, 1-2, 1-2. Was that a well publicized thing, or did you, skating at the time, I'm just trying to think of the publicity, now it's big time, was the same kind of interest in what was going on in the female skating at the time?
Yes, it's always, I mean, from Sonia Henny's time, it's always been the female figure skater. I mean, I feel sorry for my husband and brother-in-law, and, you know, all the men who have won the Olympic gold and the world championships. There's just something fascinating, I think, for the general public about the women's champion. Maybe because you need so many different things. You have to be tough-minded, you know, to get out there all by yourself and do this program, do these jumps, now the triple jumps. So there's a kind of tough-mindedness that you need, definitely. There has to be an attitude and an air and a gregariousness, which in the end, you have to look as a woman very elegant, very classy, very feminine, wispy, gentle. So it's two opposite ends of the spectrum for the female skater.
You're the first to have done a double axel in competition.
Mm-hmm.
What was your sense when that all occurred? Was it?
Well, I knew I needed it to beat Tenley. She had a double axel that was cheated, and we all were doing that. And it's like you sit back and you think, all right, what do I need to beat the champion or that person? And you look at it, you become very practical about it. And I thought, well, maybe, you know, one jump that she doesn't have. And, you know, it's been that way for all the years, because Tara Lipinski beat Michelle Kwan, who skated very well at the Olympics with a triple loop. Sarah Hughes became the Olympic gold ladies champion with 2 triple combinations. So it seems to me that it's more something that's obvious to see. You know, I mean, in skating, you can say, well, somebody's gorgeous, or they're prettier, or we like their dress better, or they have more passion, or more spirit, or more speed. But it's not as easy, if you're judging it, to make a difference between first and second, because sometimes it's so minute. But when it's a jump combination or a specific spin even, something that you can actually say the champion doesn't have, and that's what makes the difference.
Well, you've gone from a competitor, less than 50 years, I should say. This goes. I gotta be a little bit careful. To now one of the premier coaches. The whole strategy of an event, how has that changed?
Oh, tremendously, because we no longer have the school figures. We have the short program. We have that's worth, you know, 31.5%, that sort of thing. Then you have the freestyle. Now we have a certain amount of rules that you have to do in the free skating. You have to have 2 combinations, no more than 3. You need 2 footwork sequences in the senior programs. You need a certain amount of spins. So they've really laid out the program so there are definite rules as to what you have to do. And we didn't have that. So we have to keep up on those rules. And it's become very difficult. Very difficult. I mean, with the men doing quads now, and we'll probably have rules about that too. And then the new scoring system that perhaps is going to come in. So there have been a lot of changes in figure skating.
Is your mother a skater?
No, not at all. My parents were athletic, but nowhere near the ice. It's just something about this sport that I love. I truly can say I'm passionate about it. There isn't anything about the sport that I don't like.
Your story about you and your mother, I mean, that is really very compelling. What happened? And was your father, had a similar interest?
My father was a German immigrant that came over to the United States and was a baker. And his job, he always felt, was to support his 3 children, his wife and 3 children, and make a home and a family life and work hard so he can afford to have them do what they wanted to do. And that was my father's attitude. He came to very few competitions. He was supportive, but he couldn't afford to. I mean, he was home working and couldn't take time off. So he used to come to the Middle Atlantic competitions, which is still in existence, and came once to Easterns, but he never saw me win a world championship or much less the Olympics.
No. Was he alive when you...
Oh, yes, yes.
Your mother, who was the stage mom, it sounds like...
It's funny. I really have to say no, because my mother wasn't the kind that got me up in the morning and said, you have to go skating. I got myself up. And I suppose the stage mom would have come in afterwards, but she was ill from the time I was 14 and died when I was 16. So she was busy trying to survive from cancer. And I was pretty much on my own and took care of my brother and sister. So in the early years, no, I mean, I just begged to go skating, and my mother said, it's warm outside, you want to go? And we joined a club, and I think she just knew this was a commitment that I had.
Talk about commitments. You made one to her and to yourself. Here you are, 1956, the Olympics, and then the World Championships thereafter. And for the benefit of the camera, what was that commitment you sort of made to yourself in memory of your mother?
Well, when I was 10 years old, I mean, I used to talk. I mean, everybody does when they're 9, 10, 11 about I want to be Olympic champion. That's always been the premier medal that you want in figure skating and other sports where you can win Olympics. And my mother saw that I really wanted, and like most mothers, they want to see their child achieve their dream. And I told my mother, when she was dying, I said, I will try to win the Olympic gold, because I'd been the silver medalist, and she died 9 months after the 56 Olympics. And she just said, I hope you can continue to look towards that goal, because I'd like to see you get it. So I said, don't worry about it. I will be in for the next 4 years, work hard, and try to get the gold.
And shortly thereafter, was she there at the Worlds when you beat Tinley Albright?
Yes, she was. So that World Championship was very special to me. But she was really quite ill in Germany. And from the time we came home from that trip, then I definitely knew that she was not going to survive the cancer.
Tell me about Sun Valley, the whole experience.
Well, actually, I never got to Sun Valley until after I was out of skating and went as a coach and took my young pupil, Tanya Kwiatkowski, there for a competition. And there's just something special about Sun Valley, still having the rink outdoors in the mountains. And of course, I had watched Sun Valley Serenade, because I had made a movie, and they were trying to resurrect the ice rink from the Sun Valley Serenade movie. And 20th Century Fox had worked with Sonia Henney, and now I was out there. And it was a lot of fun, but Sun Valley's special for skating.
Your Olympics, 1960, you're champion. Actually, tell me about the competition itself. Who was your competition?
In 60, a Dutch girl, Shakia Dijkstra, and sort of very powerful free skater. We were very friendly, had been very friendly for 3 years. We had been competing against each other. And then the girl who won the bronze was from the United States, Barbara Rolls. And we were really good friends because we had been competing in the United States together for 3 years. And we're still friends. We've been friends for over 40 years. Laugh and giggle about staying in the dorm in the Olympic Village in Squaw Valley. How we lived together with Laurence Owen, the young lady that was killed in the plane crash the next year. How today it's so different. They have their own rooms. Here the three of us lived dorm style for 4 weeks together in Squaw Valley. We had a ball. We all competed against each other, wanted to beat each other, but got along very well.
Were you dating Heiss at the time?
Yes, actually we were, he hadn't proposed to me, but he had. He proposed to me in August up in Boyne City, Michigan, Lake Charlevoix, on the dock with a full moon. It was perfect. And so we were secretly engaged in Squaw Valley. We didn't want anybody to know.
Because they would assume that was a distraction.
Absolutely. And actually, Heiss asked both his brother, David, who won the Olympic gold the same time I did in Squaw Valley, and myself, if he should come out. If it was help, he would be there, but he didn't want to be a distraction. And we just said, well, do what you want to do. And I think Heiss felt that definitely he would stay home and watch it on TV. But I'll tell you, we were in that phone booth talking all the time. When I won the gold, I rushed over and called Heiss and said, I did it.
That's exciting.
And then we were married. The Olympics were in February, and then we were married April 30th of that year.
And he had retired from active skating.
Well, he was in law school,
right.
and actually I'm from New York City, so we used to keep the shuttle between New York City and Boston because he was at Harvard Law School, so we kept that shuttle busy.
Before an American woman would stand on the top step of the victory platform. Overcoming non-paralytic polio as a child and a severely slashed ankle less than 2 weeks before the 1956 Cortina Games, 20-year-old Tenley Albright earned the title of the finest female figure skater in the world. When HayesJenkins won the men's title in 1956, it became the first time in Winter Olympic history that Americans had won both individual championships. Jenkins' victory and 16-year-old Carol Heiss's second-place finish behind Tenley Albright marked the beginning of a romantic story that would continue 4 years later to Squaw Valley. Then Carol Heiss won the gold medal, and soon after, she and HayesJenkins were married.
Professional skating at the time. So the 1960 Olympics comes and goes. You're, on a pedestal, and then you're off to Hollywood. The Three Stooges. Now I got to tell you, those are my favorite. And I had no idea until I read that little bio that you were a movie actress for a period of time with Curly Larry and let's see, it would have been Shem.
No, it was trying to think who. Oh, I forget his name right now.
Joe
but
Besser?
No, Joe DeRita.
Oh, Judy, okay.
Joe DeRita. I think he
Right.
and just wonderful people. Wonderful. Well, I had two choices, either to make the movie or join a night show. Mm-hmm. And I thought, I was married at the time, we had just been married, and I wanted Heiss and I to make decisions together because this would affect our future life. And Heiss was wonderful because he said, this is something so different. And he said, I don't want you to look back 8-10 years from now and say, 4 months out of my life, why didn't I do it? Or what did I miss? Or I should have, or I could have. And it really was Heiss who said, I think you should do it. And I was going to earn pretty much the same amount of money in a shorter amount of time than it would have for the ice show. And it was an adventure, and I'm glad I did it because Heiss was definitely right. I can say now that I would have looked back even now and said, 40 years later, saying, why didn't I do it? I mean, why didn't I take some acting lessons from the studio and see what this adventure was all about? Because it was a marvelous experience. I enjoyed it. I knew that I didn't want to become a movie actress. And I knew then that I'd have to really get serious about it. It would have been another career like skating. And I would have had to learn to sing. I would have had to learn to dance, learn to act. And it wasn't my passion. I wanted to be married and Mrs. HayesJenkins and have children and have a family just like everyone else, driving the station wagon to, lessons and the children to school.
I got to ask you, was there any funny anecdotes during the scenes that you stand out to say, a funny thing happened to Carol HayesJenkins?
There are a couple, and I'll have Heiss tell you one about when he first met the Stooges. But
yeah, this is worth recounting because I went out with Carol for the first couple of weeks while she was in Hollywood just to help her get settled in, and we were in the director's office, and he asked Carol if she had ever met the Three Stooges, and she said no. And he said, well, he picked up the phone and placed a call and ordered them to come up, the old Hollywood days. And they came in, and Mo, who is really the leader and spokesman of the group, didn't really say anything or even shake my hand. He just looked me in the eye and he said, will your wife take a pie? And that sort of set the whole tone. They were wonderful, wonderful people. They were all grandfathers by then, and they took a very grandfatherly interest in Carol and helping her through the experience of making a movie.
Did you take a pie?
No, I never did. I never did. And as Heiss said, they were very protective of me. You're really treated out there very well. And I had my own parking space and had a little apartment on the lot and then a trailer when we did scenes off the lot. So, and there were always people around wanting to know if they could do something for you. And of course, coming from a sport like skating, where you have your coach, your parents, and it's you. And you've got to do it. I mean, people help you, but when you're out there, you do it. So I wasn't used to, just sitting there and saying, oh, well, I'll get it. I was always jumping up and saying, well, no, don't worry about it. I can do that myself, etc. So I was called into the office by Mr. Skouras, who was head of 20th Century at the time. And the Stooges said to me, oh, what do you think you did? I said, I don't know. I said, well, you just, you be very polite and you be sure we'll be waiting for you. And, we just want to know if we can help you. So I get into the office and Mr. Skouras just turned to me and he said, I would like to tell you that we're trying to make you a star. And you are the star of this movie along with the Stooges. And he said, you have to act like a star. And I said, yes, sir. And he said, please, when you're in the commissary having lunch, he said, please don't ask the other actors and actresses for their autograph. And I said, but I won't see Marilyn Monroe again. I won't see Stuart Granger. I won't see Jane Mansfield and Tyrone. All these people were there, and it was making movies. And I said, I may never see them again. I said, all right. So the Stooges, when I told them the story, they said, we bet Spyro Skouras was just laughing, behind telling you this,
Yeah. What a thrill. What a thrill. As I asked Carol about Tenley Albright, you probably had the same feeling about Dick Button.
Not really. Dick and I competed against each other for the first 4 years. I was on the world team. I was on the world team for 8 years, and I made it the first time when I was 15, and really had. I was just delighted to make the team. I made it as the fourth member. We could send 4 skaters in those days. So in the early stages, I had no. I mean, you always want to win, but I was also realistic and knew that wasn't going to happen in the near future. And Dick had won actually the World Championship the first time in 1947. He won the 48 Olympics. And then I made the team the first time in 1949. And so Dick was very well established. And Dick had really revolutionized the sport. And it was the younger skaters, I say younger, I was 3 years younger than Dick, but I was influenced by Dick's athleticism. And it's really what attracted me to the sport, the free skating side of it. So it was not uncomfortable to follow in Dick's shadow. And for 49, 50, 51, and 52 Olympics, I was on the team with Dick, certainly doing my best to try and win, but also being realistic. And I managed to, I was fourth in the Olympics in 52 and third in the Worlds that year. And then Dick retired. And the next year in 1953, I became world champion, and that was the succession. So I'd never really been right behind Dick. Another American skater, Jimmy Grogan, had always been second to Dick, and I'd always been third in nationals. And so, and then Jimmy and I faced each other in 1953, and we reversed orders, and I won the reversed order, and I won the Worlds the first time in 53, which happened to be the first year that Carol, at age 13, made the world team. And I was almost 19 at the time. So she was this cute little kid on the team. And of course, Tenley was the national champion at that time. And we won the Worlds, both of us, the first time in 53 together. So Tenley and I, our careers paralleled, and then of course in 1956, she won the Olympics, and I did, and after that we both retired from skating after that year.
But in that time of skating, was there life after Olympics? I mean, it sounds like that was the goal, that was the ultimate achievement, was to win the Olympics, and then what?
Well, there were show skating opportunities, but there wasn't the television opportunity.
Right.
There was no televising of skating in any of the years that I competed. So you didn't have that dimension, nor was there that financial opportunity. So if you wanted to take advantage from a financial standpoint, you could skate with an ice show, you could turn professional and coach, but there just weren't a whole, and obviously the money wasn't the same as it is today. And again, that's a byproduct of television popularizing the sport so much. So when I finished skating, which happened to be, when I won the Olympics, happened to be my senior year of college, so everything sort of neatly came to an end. And I decided I wanted to go on to law school. But I decided, if I skated professionally in the summertime, I could pay my own way through law school. And so that's what I did. I skated with a show called Holiday on Ice, both here in the States and in Europe, but just in the summertime. The summer after I graduated from college, and then the summer between my first and second years of law school. And then I'd earned enough money at that point to see my way through, and didn't really skate after that. I decided that after the second year of law school that I thought I'd enjoy practicing law, and I stuck with that. And
Did you know you were coming back to the Akron area? Was that, since that was sort of hometown?
well, I had lived in Colorado Springs and
Right.
trained at the Broadmoor, and I loved that area. And I had an opportunity in Denver. I had an opportunity in Cleveland and one in Akron. And I graduated in '59 from law school, so I was out practicing a year before Carol and I got married. But obviously I discussed with her, I said, what do you think about Denver? And, to a New York City girl, Denver seemed awfully far away.
Right.
And so we settled on Akron, and it was a happy choice. We enjoyed Akron. I ended up working for Goodyear Tire and made my career with them until I retired, and we enjoyed Akron. Now we've moved to Cleveland to accommodate Carol's coaching, because her coaching career has basically been in Cleveland, and that was hard because she was driving back and forth 30 miles. Of course, to a New Yorker, I tried to say, this is nothing to a New Yorker.
Parenthetically, I spent a lot of time down in Hudson, Ohio. My kids went to Western Reserve Academy, so I was bouncing back and forth and around there. Tell me, let's rewind a little bit. You and your brother and your mother ended up literally going from Akron down to Colorado to train.
That's correct.
Was that a common thing to do? Now you hear about that a lot, but was that a common thing where you went to a location to train?
Well, more so in our day in terms of what we called summer skating.
Okay.
Because there were not very many rinks open in the summertime. And your key areas were Lake Placid, and I spent 5 summers skating in Lake Placid, taking from Gus Lucy, the same coach that trained Dick Button.
Right.
And in the early years, Gus Lucy, when I was on the world team in the early years, I was actually being trained by Gus Lucy, who trained Dick Button. Or you could go to Michigan State, which ran a summer skating program. At their rink, the Broadmoor Hotels rink was open in the summer. So you tended to get in the car and head someplace for the summer. Most of the kids now don't have to go away to go skating for the summer, but you still have the prospect of families being disrupted because the skaters go away to a skating program, whether it be Delaware or here, in Jamestown. I mean, it's you go where the program is at many times, and that makes skating difficult from a family standpoint. But this is true in gymnastics. It's true in you go where the program is. And where the coaching that you want is. But that's more a year-round thing now. In my day, you'd go away in the summertime.
Was your dad a skating fan?
No, my dad was an athlete. He was a football player and a baseball player and a basketball player in college. But nothing to do, and my mother was more musical. She wasn't really an athlete. But no, they had no background in skating. I had an older sister, and Nancy's the one that started skating. And I started going to the rink with her, and we actually skated a pair in the early days. And we both entered singles competitions as well. But when she went off to college, she left the skates at home, and I continued my singles skating. And then my younger brother has often reminded me that nobody asked him if he wanted to skate. He said, I had to skate because you two guys skated and I couldn't be left at home alone. And there's a certain truth to it. I mean, David got drawn into the skating because Nancy and I were enjoying it.
And but this was quite a commitment at that time. In your area, were you unique in the sense that Jenkins family that took off?
Yes. In terms of the seriousness and the commitment with which we took it, because we started to do this summer skating going up to Lake Placid very early in the game. And this was not as common for what you call club skaters. And eventually I started to do most of my training at the Cleveland Skating Club in Cleveland, because there was a coach there that in the early years that I wanted to take from. So I represented actually the Cleveland Skating Club for many years until I moved out to Colorado Springs and started training at the Broadmoor.
1956 Olympics. Who was your competition there?
Well, my competition was actually the other two American boys. We were entitled to have 3 members at that point in the Olympics. And Ronnie Robertson, who was the second-ranked skater in the United States, and my younger brother David, who was third. And that's the order in which we finished the Olympics in 1960, and then, or 56, and then we had the World Championships.
We just finished. You finished 1, 2, 3 in the Olympics.
Yes, and then 2 weeks later we had the World Championships in Garmisch, Germany, and again we finished first, second, third. In that competition, it was the first time Carol won the World Championships. She had been second in the Olympics and won the World. So for that one World Championship, we were world champions together, which is a wonderful memory. And I think this is when Carol and I started to notice one another. We did a lot of exhibitions around Europe together, and kept crossing paths in the United States doing exhibitions and enjoying one another's company. And but really our so-called courtship really was after I was out of skating and while I was in law school, and she was still skating. I mean, it certainly the skating brought us together, and we've enjoyed the skating all these years because it's something we shared. But in terms of careers, my brother's career and Carol's parallel each other more than Carol and I.
I'm not going to competitively skate anymore, and I'm going to do my professional career. Was that tough? Was that a tough decision? Or was it clear to you that was tough?
If you ask my younger brother,
yeah.
Who had been nipping at my heels, and see, he was already doing triple jumps back in 1956. And he had 2 triples, a triple sock on a triple loop in the Olympics and in the Worlds that year. He landed one, fell on the other. And I didn't. I had a triple loop that I could do in practice, but it was nowhere near consistent enough to try and put in a program. So I had a little brother that was making life difficult for me as it was. So if you ask him that question, my retirement was not difficult because I wanted to get out of his way. Now, I can dispute that, but there's a certain truth to it. No, I was ready. I enjoyed skating, and I enjoyed competing, and I enjoyed defending my title, which is a funny thing. You win the Worlds once, and at least in my case, and I know in Carol's, you wanted to go back and prove the point. You didn't want to be a fluke. You want to say, yeah, I was the world champion. I'm going to go back and prove it. Then, after you've won it the second time, it's only 2 more years to the Olympics. And if your sport is represented in the Olympics, there just isn't anything in the sport by way of accomplishment that quite matches winning the Olympic gold. So that was an easy decision to stay on until the Olympics, which was funny in a way, because I remember my father, after I was in the 1952 Olympics, and he said, well, now you're going to go on to college. You've been 4th in Olympics and 3rd in the world that year. And he said, now that's the end of skating, isn't it? And I said, well, Dick Button's retiring. I want to skate one more year and see if, and then I ended up staying in another 4 years. But when that 4 years was over, 1956, I felt I was done. I really enjoyed the sport. The sport was awfully good to me, but I was ready to move on. But I enjoyed the professional skating I did in the summertime. Strangely enough, it really, in fact, the most difficult transition in my life was going from skating in an ice show, and the last show I did was in Stockholm, Sweden. I got on a plane, flew back to Boston. The next day, registered for law school, and to go from a show to the law school environment was a very rough transition.
Wow.
But that was my life changed at that point.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. It probably maybe even helped a little bit with your relationship with Carol, because here she was so highly competitive and so driven that you were not going through that same process in your own personal career. I mean, you've been there, you've done that, but you were on a little bit of a different track at the time.
Well, that's very true. That's very true. But I could sympathize with Carol's desire to have that Olympic title. And this is why, for us, it was easy to put off our personal plans until the 60 Olympics were over. But it was, and we had a rather long distance courtship because she was busy skating and I was busy plowing through the books, and we'd try and get together in the summertime for 2 or 3 weeks each summer. Her coach, Pierre Brunet, had a cabin on Lake Charlevoix up in northern Michigan. And I would manage to get up there and spend 2 or 3 weeks with Carol at the Brunet's cottage. And she mentioned my proposing tour in northern Michigan on the shores of Lake Charlevoix, and that just one of those summers I took advantage of the visit.
Oh, that's terrific. You must be so proud when you're even watching TV and Carol's all the way around the world, and the camera hones in on her.
You know, I am, and I'm happy for her because I know that she's doing what she loves to do, and I think that she's a very fortunate person to be involved in something that she genuinely loves. I remember in my travels in business, I was checking into the airport at the Frankfurt. The hotel at the Frankfurt airport, and I turned on Eurovision, and they happened to have the World Championships on TV, and as the set warmed up, the first image on the screen was Carol, because she was there with Tanya, and I said, boy, what a strange world.
Yesterday, I got to tell you, I came over during lunch and I put my camcorder across while you were working with Pennington.
Yes.
Yeah. And I just focused on the two of you.
Oh.
And it's just Pennington, people follow skaters, but I'm going to do the coaching. And it was just so much fun to isolated camera, the old football thing, where you guys are twisting, and Carol, of course, is very intense.
Well, now that I'm retired, I've gotten more involved vicariously, but I'm known by the kids as a technical advisor, see, which is a wonderful role to play because you can get into everything.
That's right.
But you're not responsible. So I'm the technical advisor, and that's what I was busy waving my arms.
It was terrific.
With Parker Pennington. Right after I retired, Carol had a conflict. Actually, she was going to be in Moscow with Timothy Gable. And at the same time, they had Junior World Championships in Zagreb, Croatia. And Parker was being put on the team at age 13. And she said, would you mind taking Parker to Junior Worlds because I've got this conflict. And I'd always help the kids if she had a conflict at competitions, but, going off and, being responsible on my own, I said, well, sure. I said, I'd be glad to if it's okay with Parker. And so the two of us went off for 8 days in Zagreb, Croatia, and I remember she said, now, there's about 50 boys, and so they'll have a qualification round. And she said, Parker's the youngest one in the competition, so don't worry if he doesn't make the finals. And we got there, and I thought to myself, not on my shift. And well, Parker had the same idea. So the two of us hunkered down, and we made the final round, and he ended up placing 14th, which was very respectable. So, so we look back on that.
So you got more than a passing interest in what I saw there yesterday. So that's just terrific. What's next for Carol? And I know what's your goal as far as coaching? Is there a defined that?
For myself, as far as skating, as I say, I enjoy now the opportunity to visit the rink and be around the skaters again. It's fun. I'm not in the rink every day, and I'm not coaching. I'm there to pitch up and help if help's needed. And it's fun to be Carol, and I know what Carol means. She loves to work with the kids. They're highly motivated, and she feels it keeps her attitude young. Mm-hmm. And I know exactly what she means. And so from that standpoint, I'm enjoying being around the skating and the skaters again. And we're interested. It's a sport in transition right now, and where it's going to come out, I'm not quite sure. But it's going through some difficult times. And in a way, it'll be interesting to see in a year or two how the sport the sport sorts itself out and the public's reaction to it.
Carol said, and I'm sure you'll agree, that Olympic skating has been and continues to be a female spectator sport.
But I agree exactly with what she's saying. It always has been the women's side of the sport that has attracted the most attention. Of course, then I point out to her that it's also the side of the sport that is more the soap opera.
Oh, sure.
But the men are pretty straightforward, and But the women's side of the sport has always had drama.
Do they find? I mean, here's a HayesJenkins, a David Jenkins. I mean, that whole story of brothers back-to-back Olympic gold medalists. Yet, I think to the layperson, you may be a forgotten guy.
Yes, and I think the reason for that, I mean, to begin with, at the time we participated in the sport, it wasn't being televised, and it wasn't on the map to the extent that it is today. I mean, you think of just the Olympics alone and the focus and attention that skating gets. Not all of it attention that we would prefer to have when they have some of the problems they've had, but nevertheless, the sport attracts people's interest and attention, and the men's part of the skating as well, because when you think of the men's event and some of the marvelous evenings of skating the men have put on to watch, but Dave and I don't come from that era, and frankly, there isn't even, I don't know of a film in existence, other than the Russians, I think, have some footage, of my winning the Olympics. There's no, so it doesn't, I'm not bothered by it because, I have the satisfaction.
Oh, sure.
And I'm no different than anybody from my era. Some of the men have brought wonderful attention to the sport, such as Scott Hamilton, who has done an awful lot for skating. And Brian Boitano has done a lot for the skating, and you can begin to when you begin to think about it, there's a number of men that have become household names, but many more women have become household names, and that's fine.
Even the scheduling of the events, when you think about it, I mean, the premier event is the women.
Exactly. Yeah, it's usually scheduled as a Saturday night event.
Yeah. What's Carol's goal as far as coaching? I know she mentioned it, I know she talked about it, would she like to find that an Olympic gold medalist? Is that the drive, or is it really?
To get satisfaction out of coaching, I don't think Carol has to see her pupil standing at the top of the podium in the Olympics or Worlds. Yes, she'd love it. And yes, she's competitive enough still that wants it to happen. But it isn't what drives her in the sport. It isn't what gets her up in the morning, goes to the rink. I think she said it well in her interview. I think it's the satisfaction of working with the kids and seeing them get some. I think, and I know exactly how she feels when you see one of the youngsters come off the ice, regardless of how they placed, when they've done their best, and you see that glow. And yeah, she'd love to have an Olympic champion. She'd love to have a world champion. But if that's all that drives you, it's too narrow a focus. She enjoys working with the kids.
I've always been impressed that she does have the big picture, and certainly you read about the politics of some of these other coaches who kind of work their way towards that end.
Well, she enjoys coaching competitive skaters.
Right.
I mean, she's in the competition game,
Right.
And she enjoys working with kids that are interested in competing. But even there, she's worked with some kids who just enjoy skating, and that's fine. But I mean, most of the skaters are skaters who want to compete, who want to see how far they can go with it. It's a difficult sport, and not very many get a very good handle on the brass ring. It's a tough road.
What was your highlight?
My highlight?
Aside from Mary and Carol.
Okay, well but see, I have to start there because, when I think of all the memories from skating, and Carol and I we have a scrapbook of memories together. And that's at the top of the list. But for both of us, obviously, winning the Olympic gold medal. And for me, winning it and then standing on the podium with your brother.
Yeah. Wow.
And David and I look back on that experience together. And I think that sort of been passed over a little bit in terms of history. I mean, and again, it's what we were talking about earlier, that my era of skating isn't, there isn't as much focus on it, there isn't as much memory of the detail of it because people weren't watching it on television.
Right.
But David and I privately enjoy the memory of that, of what we did together.
Now, is your brother stayed involved in the sport?
No, he went on to medical school and ended up, and then interestingly enough, he won the Olympics during his second year of medical school, which is quite an extraordinary achievement. But we were talking earlier about what the Olympic gold means, and he'd won the Worlds twice, graduated from college, and I remember saying to David, I said, you've proved the point, you've won it twice. You're going on to medical school. And I said, I couldn't have competed and gone to law school. There's no way you can compete and go to medical school. He said, and again, he said, I'm going to tell you again, nobody asked me if I wanted to skate. But he said, I skated, and he said, now I can't quit. He said, I want my shot at the gold medal. So he defended his title during the first year of medical school. And then and medical school was willing to put up with, he'd to maybe take 10 days off, rush over, compete, and come back. I mean, he didn't do exhibitions or anything. And so during his second year, medical school was the Olympics in Squaw Valley. And he won the Olympics, did not compete in Worlds 2 weeks later, went back to medical school. But then they gave him permission to take a year off, and he stayed with Ice Follies for a year to earn the money to pay the rest of the way through medical school. So we both had that little experience in the professional world, which we both enjoyed very much. But then he went back to medical school, finished, and has been practicing medicine since then. And he's been basically out of skating, except 1 year he was the team doctor for the world team.
Okay. You get your skates on?
Do I
Do you
skate?
put your skate on?
I don't. And strangely enough, Carol won't let me. And the reason for that is we went skiing. We hadn't skied for several years, and we went skiing 2 winters ago. And I said to Carol after skiing, I said, this exercise really feels good, and I need to do something. I think I'm going to start to get on the ice and just stroke and skate. And she said, no, you're not. And I said, well, what do you mean? She said, it's too dangerous. And I said, you preach muscle memory to the kids. And I said, I can tell you right now, my muscles remember how to do it. I said, I think I can handle it. And she said, no, if you fall, you're going to hit your head. And, and she was serious. And she said, if you'll wear a helmet, you can skate. And I said, well, I'm not going to wear a helmet. I said, I have some pride. But the point she makes isn't bad. Unfortunately, the worst falls you take skating usually aren't the falls when you're moving, when you're jumping or whatnot.
Right.
It's those clumsy falls when your feet go out from under you.
Right.
And so anyway, she didn't want to be responsible for my skating.
Does she? I assume she
teaches on skates.
Yeah.
And if you were to ask her the question, she'd have to admit that once in a while she'll take a fall and she'll come home a little bruised. I think that's why she figures that one's enough.
Oh my gosh. That's terrific. Is there a low light? Is there a thing that you'd say, gee, I wish I would have done differently? Is there a kind of, if you had to do it all over again, you would have done it differently?
No, now that I look back on it, in terms of both the skating, marriage, family, and of course we're up to 8 grandchildren now, so we're in that wonderful phase of life where we're enjoying our grandchildren and then can give them back to their parents when... and so in all honesty, no, I think I feel very fortunate. A lot of it's luck. Being in the right place at the right time. Even if you think of something like winning the Olympics, you had to get up and not be sick that morning. Mm-hmm. It can happen. Right. And you can work all those years and then not be, suddenly come up lame or sick and you miss your opportunity. So there's always an element of luck involved. But I think Carol and I are both firm believers that you nudge your luck a little bit. At least you prepare to take advantage of it. And that's what she tries to tell the kids.
If there's something that you felt like you left the sport, you'd say, gee, this is something that I want to make sure that the sport remembers about HayesJenkins, what would it be?
I feel my place in the sport is taking what Dick Button gave to the sport, and there's no question he revolutionized the sport. It was a totally different sport after Dick left it. And I would like to be remembered as taking what Dick contributed and adding to it. I was, my particular style of skating, because of my build, was, I wouldn't call it artistic, but it was, perhaps it was more flowing. And I paid very, very close attention to the music and to the choice of music. And I'd like to think that what I added to the sport was taking the athleticism and marrying it more with the musicality. And I'm not going to say artistry, because the sport hadn't reached that point, I don't think, with the artistry. And some of the artistry in the sport in the ensuing years, it's had its ups and downs. Sometimes it's gone a little bit too flamboyant. You know, it's a delicate mix, skating, between athleticism and artistry, and it has to be a proper balance. But I guess that I would like that to be considered my contribution. And then I think my younger brother simply took that a step further, because he was very musical as well, but much more of a jumper than I was. So that I think that in the years, in the 12-year period that Dick and myself and David were the world and Olympic champions, I'd like to think the sport progressed athletically and artistically.
What did Dick Button doing some revolutionary things to the sport? Specifically, what were they?
Oh, the jumping. The jumping. And making the music mean something. I mean, Dick the music was not as much a background as it sometimes was. I mean, and that isn't to say that up to that time people hadn't paid attention to music, but I think the skaters, more skaters were paying attention to the music. Dick certainly was, but Dick was doing things athletically on the ice that simply had not been done. And the Europeans in those days called it the American School of Skating. And we learned to skate during the Second World War, when we were not under the influence of the pre-war skating styles. And so I think the American skaters, led by Dick, sort of developed their own style, and it tended toward the more athletic. And so that when they resumed world competition, surprisingly as early as 1947, Dick took Europe by storm, because they had never seen that kind of jumping. And then the other Americans were ready to come along and follow, because that's the school of skating that we had grown up under.
And there was obviously you were pretty much distracted. He's practicing law and you're playing with him.
Well, I never really left. I wasn't coaching and I wasn't actually skating, but I would be spokeswoman for various companies, and then I did commentary for ABC, NBC, and CBS, the various championships. So I always kind of had my finger in it and kept up to date. We always kept up to date with all the things in skating. But for 18 years, you're right, I didn't have a daily job. And then two men decided they'd open up a rink in Akron, and maybe 10 minutes away from our back door of our home. And they asked us if I'd be interested in coaching either one of us. And Hayes said, absolutely not. And I said, no, I wouldn't do that. But we went out one night when it was getting ready to open, and they were hosing it down, getting ready to freezing the ice. And we started talking to them, got back in the car, and Hayes said, all the volunteer work you do, he said, it's clear they really don't have a good idea about really what this sport is. And I had been very involved in the Akron City Hospital Women's Board, the Junior League of Akron, tennis, running the Virginia Slims tennis tournament in Akron. And I just volunteered for 18 years. And Hayes said, this is our sport. You ought to volunteer your services. And I said, well, like what? He said, well, maybe run a clinic on Saturday for them, for free. Just tell them you're going to be there. So I said, well, all right. So called them the next day and said, for the next 6 Saturdays, I'll be happy. You can advertise. I'll be out there and I'll run a clinic for you and help you out. Well, the first Saturday morning, I think over 350 kids arrived. And they were from beginners who had just gotten skates for Christmas, and some were pretty good, and some just wanted to make it across the width of the rink. And after a couple of hours of being there, I just loved it. I mean, I had my skates on, I was in my skating dress and helping them, and all of a sudden I was thinking, my gosh, I've got this child actually stroke the width of the rink, and that would make me excited. Or somebody would learn a bunny hop or wall jump, and I organized them into groups. I had a ball, and Hayes took me out to dinner that night, and I just said, you know what? I just loved being on the rink, and I just love this. And he said, well, we'll see what happens. And I had a couple calls from some really good skaters. They were on their 7th figure test, and they were trying to make sectionals, Midwesterns, and possibly going to nationals. And I said, well, I'm new at this. I don't know how good I'm going to be as a coach, but I'll be willing to help. And then if I find I can't really do it, I'll send them on. And they made Midwesterns that year. Passed their 7th test, made Midwesterns. And then I said, well, I've got a goal. Somebody should be a medalist at nationals within 5 years. And within 2.5 years, I had a little boy, Jeff Friedman, that was on the podium in National Novice. So I thought, well, I guess I can get people to nationals and get them to win a medal in novice level. So I kept going. And then Tanya Kwiatkowski made Worlds and 6th in the world. So I was hooked from the very beginning, coaching.
What's the highlight?
The highlight, several, but the highlight about coaching or what they do?
Yeah, coaching. Let's start with coaching.
Just seeing somebody walk off the ice and say to me, that's the best I've ever skated. And it can be a little juvenile who ends up being 4th or 5th, but it's their personal best. And to see their faces light up, and I know what's going through their mind, all that work, and this is the best I could possibly do. And it just, that's worth everything. Absolutely worth everything. And I think one of the other highlights is probably when Tanya went after the Olympics. Nicole Bobeck dropped out and Tara Lipinski, and she went with Michelle Kwan to Minneapolis for Worlds. And she was the alternate, and nobody ever expected that she'd go, except inside I thought maybe she'd have a chance. And when we got to the World Championships, Tanya was in such good shape, because I kept calling her from Nagano saying, you keep going through that program twice in a row. You stay in good shape because you could be going to Worlds. And when she finished her program, the first practice session, she got a standing ovation. And every practice session, Tanya got a standing ovation from the people because they were so appreciative. She was in such good shape, and she was there, and she ended up 6th. That was a highlight for me.
About yours? Aside from marrying Hayes, after you leave, we'll talk about that.
Well, of course, skating, meeting Hayes and having this wonderful relationship. We've been married for over 43 years. And marrying somebody who has been in the sport, done so well, but understands, doing the same thing I did. So we have such a wonderful, ambiance to know what I'm going through as a coach, what these kids are going through as a skater. So that does, it's very involved in our life, because no matter where we go in the world, we meet somebody who might have seen us in TV or at some rink. The skating always comes up. And being Olympic champion really is a wonderful thing, because the Olympic gold is very special. It's special to us, but it seems to be special to people. They're very appreciative and cognizant of what we've done. The other, and on an equal basis, at our age, we look back and we're very proud of our 3 children. Because you never know if you're a good parent as you're going through those years. And it isn't until your children are grown that you can look back and say, well, I made this mistake, I should have done this. We look at our 3 children and our 8 grandchildren, and we're very, very blessed.
They took a vote and decided we were okay.
When does that time come? I have a 22, 20, and 18-year-old. I want to know when that I know you got it.
Thank you. If you need anything, I'll come back up.
Carol, we're here in the continuum of skating advancement and the legacy to the sport. What would Carol's legacy be to the sport?
I'm so close to Carol that maybe I shouldn't be the one that's asked. I think Carol brings has brought a lot of good attention to the sport in terms of the way she handled the sport when she was a champion, when she was winning. The enthusiasm she brought to it then and now, and quite frankly, I think the dignified way that she was champion and then coach. But then that's a husband speaking.
And speaking well. This is terrific. I've loved every second of this.
Well, great, and Carol would be glad. She said she'd be glad to come back up. It's been fun meeting you.
Button became the first United States figure skating gold medal winner in 1948, when the games were resumed in San Moritz after a 12-year hiatus because of World War II. He repeated his victory in 1952, but it would be another 4 years before an American woman would stand on the top step of the victory platform. Overcoming non-paralytic polio as a child and a severely slashed ankle less than 2 weeks before the 1956 Cortina Games, 20-year-old Tenley Albright earned the title of the finest female figure skater in the world. When HayesJenkins won the men's title in 1956, it became the first time in Winter Olympic history that Americans had won both individual championships. Jenkins' victory and 16-year-old Carol Heiss's second-place finish behind Tenley Albright marked the beginning of a romantic story that would continue 4 years later to Squaw Valley. Then Carol Heiss won the gold medal, and soon after, she and HayesJenkins were married.